Hi everyone, this is our channel, Meet the Real Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
Hi, I'm Gamila. Have you ever experienced a life problem? I know everyone has their own problems, but imagine you had to hide something all your life. Do you know what it feels like? If not, let me tell you. My name is Gamila. It means beautiful in Arabic, and I really am beautiful, or so I've been told. But I have a problem. I always wear a glove on my left hand anywhere I go because I'm too embarrassed to show it to anyone. This has become my life problem. You see, I've had 7 fingers on my left hand since birth. My family couldn't afford a surgery to remove these extra 2 fingers. It would have cost a lot of money, and I would have had to travel abroad because we didn't have clever doctors or good hospitals in my area. So I've been wearing a glove on my left hand since I was young as a temporary solution for this problem. People always ask me about the glove, but I never answer. I just say that my fingers get cold. You would see me in the summer wearing a short, sleeveless blouse and a glove on my left hand. There were a lot of things I had to give up because of my hand. Once, I wanted to play gymnastics. My mom was okay with it, so I went to many places to train, but they all refused to accept me because of my 7 fingered hand, which they considered to be a problem. At school, my classmates would laugh and ridicule me a lot, so I never had a lot of friends, just a few. I got into the college of my dreams. I thought that people might stop this bullying, so I considered taking off the glove. But I was afraid, because I was going to join a new society, so I didn't. I went with the glove instead. I was surprised at the amount of bullying at college, more than I had ever seen. It was a good thing that I decided to wear my glove. There were a lot of bullies there. Then, something happened. It became a turning point in my life. One time, while I was standing and speaking with my friends, one of them suddenly pulled off my glove. This glove was old and wasn't very tight on my hand. I had been intending to buy a new one after school, but they all discovered my secret. Some were astonished, while others started making fun of me and bullying me. I stopped going to university for a whole week. People blame me for something that wasn't my fault, but that was the story of my life. If I hid away now, I'd be in this mess forever. So I decided never to wear that glove again. I decided to face my fears. I am beautiful enough to live a good life. I decided to ignore all the bullies and take care of myself. I went to my college. I didn't care about people's opinions. I focused on my studies, had great success, and proved to myself and to others that I was not disabled. The disabled can't think or succeed. Later, when I was attending a lecture by a famous doctor, he noticed my hand and offered to operate on it and make it look normal. This surgery would be the first of its kind in my country, and I accepted. When I saw my hand after the surgery, I couldn't believe myself. Bullying can ruin people's lives, but as they say, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent.
I have drank and I've used drugs, but I've never suffered from withdrawals. I've never chosen drugs or alcohol over my loved ones. And I have never stolen anything in order to score. I'm not an addict, but I love one. And sometimes that's an addiction. Like so many other teens and young adults, I experimented with my fair share of recreational drugs and alcohol in high school. So when my younger sister started doing the same thing when she was 14, I wrote off her new habits as reckless, youthful behavior. She would grow out of this phase eventually, I thought, just like I did. But instead of getting bored with the lifestyle and moving on, she craved more of it. And by the time she was 19, the party drugs she was using were not even enough for her. And that's when she found heroin. One of the first things that gave away her addiction was her eyes, usually big and blue and full of light. They became dark and dodgy orbs that could never quite focus, never look you back, never hold your gaze. The look I had once found in them was long gone, and I felt uneasy whenever our eyes met, which, as she began to use more, became less and less frequent. As drugs became a bigger part of her life, everything else became smaller, even me. The days of us driving around our small town in my car, smoking a ball and blasting Sublime, were replaced with quick visits to her darkened bedroom, a space that I had left her in after I went off to college, which had transformed from a teenage safe haven into a dark cave filled with cigarette smoke, empty booze bottles, and stash boxes of every kind of opiate you could imagine, including heroin, oxycodone, and opium. The evidence was right in front of me, but sometimes it's easier to ignore the obvious than it is to embrace the uncomfortable. When we went out, which was rare because it was nearly impossible to get my sister away from the comfort cave she had built for herself, I wrote off her frequent visits to the bathroom and lack of appetite as stomach problems or even body issues. When she didn't laugh at our favorite comedy sketches, I told myself that maybe she'd just seen it too many times for it to be funny anymore. When she stayed up until 4 a.m. in the morning and slept until 3 p.m., and when she started wearing long clothes in 90-degree weather, when she couldn't hold a job, when she got her hands on money she couldn't explain, and when I actually found her stash in her purse when I was snooping one day, I just kept telling myself, she's young, she's rebelling, she'll move past this phase. I was 24 and living in Brooklyn when my 21-year-old sister called me and admitted it. Plainly and almost optimistically, she was an addict. I think you already know this, she said, voice shaky and a little too loud. But I have a drug problem. Her confession gave me no choice but to admit it too. And suddenly, my entire world had changed. The lying, the stealing, the cheating, the messy parts of an addict's life don't really change from one user to the next. They're just as dark, just as sad, and just as unforgivable as you would imagine they would be. And they're not worth the reliving and writing because I relive them every day in my own mind. Loving a drug addict is all consuming and inescapable. It's on your mind all the time. You become a husk of a human whose insides have been entirely replaced by anger, fear, and resentment, and suddenly those feelings start to bubble over into every part of your life. The little voices in your head start to tell you to be suspicious of everyone in your life. Because if this one person could betray you, if your loved one could steal from you, if your own little sister could stare you straight in the eyes and swear up and down they haven't used, when you know damn well they're hiding the drugs in their bra, then who can you trust? Your constant suspicion makes you angry too. Angry at your loved one for getting addicted in the first place. Furious at the family who sat back and watched it happen. And bitter with the entire world for allowing a problem like this to exist. But it's the guilt that hurts me most of all. Because I have taken her addiction and made it my own. Because of the darkest question in my mind isn't about whether or not my sister will live to her 25th birthday, but rather how I could have prevented it all by her 15th birthday. We grew up in a small town, and my sister and I, we were 3 years apart, were close in as preteens and as teens. We did all the normal things sisters do together. Shopping, movie nights, annoying our mother. But we also did the normal things bored kids from a small town do together. And that included drinking, drugs, and partying. By the time I was a senior in high school and she was a freshman, we skipped out on the first period of school in favor of a ball cruise and a late breakfast at the diner in the next town over. When I went off to college, I didn't leave my sister at home to die of boredom. Instead, I frequently had her come visit me. And we would attend frat parties, go to raves, and stay up all night drinking, smoking, and doing whatever drug of choice. Weed, molly, ecstasy, and poppers of every variety was being passed around that night. When I would return home for visits, I made sure I always came packing weed for out west. A 30 rack of beer from the liquor store, and a small bag of the latest pill or powder to make the rounds at campus. And it didn't stop after college either. When I moved to New York for my first post-grad job, my sister came out to spend the Thanksgiving holiday with me. And instead of watching the Macy's Day Parade like we did when we were kids, we tripped on synthetic acid and made weed cookies. Even though I've traded in my own days of hard partying for a life of Friday nights spent curled up on the couch with a glass of glass, it's hard not to wonder if my influence on my sister's life led her down this dark and unending spiral of addiction. How could I have let something this awful happen to someone I love? And what role did I play in causing this? Those constant feelings of guilt are as consuming as heroin itself. Loving an addict is like being a user yourself, only instead of injecting your body with the pills and powders and alcohol, you soak your entire life in remorse and self condemnation. You convince yourself that you caused the problem and not the addict, that you're somehow in the way of the solution, not the addiction. It's selfish and self absorbed to assume you have so much power over someone else's life and something as strong as drug addiction. But when you love someone who is struggling, you just want to take everything difficult away from them, including the responsibility. And I find comfort in my guilt because I feel like as long as I own it and claim responsibility for it, I can own my sister's addiction too. If I own it, then I can control it. And if I can control it, then I can solve it. If I can solve it, then I can make sure it never happens again. But my safety blanket of guilt is more than just a desperate grasp at control. It's an addiction that feeds my soul in a vital and necessary way. A direct connection to a sister I'm constantly worried about losing. If my addiction is alive, if my guilt survives in a way, my sister will always survive too. They teach you in support groups not to blame yourself, not to hold yourself accountable for someone else's choices. But for me, letting go of that guilt is an impossible task. In my head, I know my sister's addiction is not my fault. I know I did not create my sister's addiction, but deep in the pit of my stomach, I feel these things. And unless